wanting to make a quick video introducing you to a case I want to talk to you about, which is an Australian missing persons case. It's very complex. This case, just like all missing persons cases, has, ruined lives and left a trail of grief. But it's just got so much to it. There are ruined careers, there are things that are kept from the public, there are shocking revelations, and it seems like there's just going to be no resolution, and that this person is just never going to be found, and we'll never know what happened. This is what it feels like. It's not a vintage true crime. It is a few years old, but there's things happening with this case all the time. And in June this year, we're going to know the results of an 18-month-long inquest. The case I'm talking about is that of our little stolen Spiderman, William Tyrrell. So William Tyrrell was only 3 years old when he went missing on the 12th of September in 2014. So it means that when we do have the announcement of the results of this inquest, he would have been turning 10 years old. I'll try just to keep it really simple and just give you a little foundation now, because at every step and with every point I'm going to make, there are twists and turns to do with timelines, statements, etc. And I just want to be very succinct right now and give you a little bit of the background. Australia was shocked when they found out that missing boy William Tyrrell was actually a foster child. He and his slightly older sister were being cared for by a Sydney couple, and we still do not know to this day their identities. In interviews, their faces are blacked out and their names have never been published, although recently I've seen that they have been doxed, stalked, etc. I'm a little bit behind on what's happening in the case currently because I've been following other ones, but I've always wanted to bring you this one. It's so sad, it's so fascinating, and it makes you furious. William's family, so his foster parents and his biological sister, went on a trip up to Kendall, which is a little mid-coast town north of Sydney, to visit the foster grandparent, the mother of the mother. The trip was going to be taken on the 12th of September, but the family actually quickly made plans to leave earlier. So cats were put into boarding, and William and his sister were picked up from the, the care, kind of like kindergarten care or some sort of daycare that they were in. Neither of the children were old enough to be going to school. So they were picked up hastily from the care and taken up to Kendall. The family left Sydney at about 4 p.m. and they told investigators they'd stopped at a McDonald's 2 or 3 hours north of Sydney for a pit stop, and made a stop a little way along the road soon after. And we, the public, were always saying, could we see the footage of the stop? Was William with the family? Did they stop there? The following morning on the 12th, after it's said that William bunked down with Dad and the daughter with Mum, it's said that on the morning of the 12th of September, foster Dad left the home at about 9 a.m. to go into nearby Lakewood, which is nearer the coast, and it had better Wi-Fi reception, so Dad wanted to make some business calls or something. So he left at about 9 o'clock. 2 hours later at 11 o'clock, the police are called, and the foster mum is saying, well, it's my son, he's 3.5, he's gone missing. So there's a lot revolving around this case to do with the timeline. For me, I wonder, you know, what happened at the pit stop. Foster grandmother has dementia. You know, did William arrive alive? Did the foster father leave with William in the morning? His timeline is a bit screwy as to, you know, what the pair of them have said about his arrival back at the home when she was called. Foster mum, you know, the timeline is screwy with what she says she did and when, and all sorts of things that come up in subsequent interviews with the things she says, the things that she says she did and saw. I'm going to get into those in subsequent videos. It'll just be confusing to try and cover it all now. But let's just say to me, I don't trust her. I don't trust this story. It changes too much, and they're too obtuse, and they're too there's some very weird things about this couple. That's what I think. And I'm also wondering now, are they still having their and are they still anonymous because they are still fostering William's sister? Is it to protect her that they are allowed to be you know, allowed to be anonymous? Is this why they haven't adopted her 7 years later? You know, they've had 7 years with this child to brainwash her, basically, as far as I'm concerned. Should she still be with them? Now, so there's a lot to get into. There's a lot to get into. There was a photograph taken that morning of William Tyrrell in a Spiderman suit. Was it taken this morning? There's questions about the time. I have questions about when it was taken at all. What I mean by that is, was it even on this day? But anyway, there's been a lot of the blame game played, as obviously there would be, but, you know, there's been people pursued that have had, you know, terrible reputations. They may have been in jail for certain things. There was a detective that came on the case a few months after William went missing, and his name's Gary Jubilin, and he pursued a guy called Savage quite savagely. Jubilin was known, I think, as sort of this really hard-nosed old-school cop who knew how to get his man, and he, you know, carried out searches at Savage's home several times. He was making recordings on his phone of these searches, and the fourth time he was there and interviewing Savage, he didn't have a warrant, and it wasn't his lawful right to be doing it, to make the recording, even though he says, well, I thought it was. I was doing it to protect myself because I didn't want allegations to be made against me. Just say, this is to protect myself. He thought that Savage might say that certain things were said and done during this visit. So he recorded it. Well, it was unlawful. He's since lost his job. He got fined. He's got a criminal record now. He's cropped up in the Melissa Caddick case as the investigator to hunt that woman down. But I didn't want to get into that, but I just found that really interesting. I'm glad his, skills are being put to use. I think they're better being put to use there perhaps when he's not there as a homicide detective investigating a little boy, and maybe even, look, I don't want to say anything against him, but possibly obstructing justice in a way by the manner with which he's conducting himself. Also, during the inquest, the foster parents were very upset now that he's not able to be there to kind of be on their side, because if you're against someone else, you're kind of for them. And, Jubilee was pursuing Savage quite strongly. He liked him for it, sort of thing. Whereas, many people are very suspect of these foster parents simply, because of their own statements and their own acting. The fact that they're protected rubs people up the wrong way. And, there are allegations made against them from the biological family. The biological family, so Carly Tyrrell and Ben Collins, obviously have suffered greatly. They'd already lost both of their children. There are allegations that this couple were ones that were living a life that had domestic violence as part of their regular lives. And, of course, children, even if they're not being directly abused, if they're in a home with domestic violence, that is a form of abuse. So it is sad that it couldn't be worked out that the biological family can keep care of these little children. William was quite young when him and his sister went into foster care. And it's been sporadic, the visitation, and it wasn't always in a great place to facilitate a really happy, comfortable visit, because, it's said that they would meet in shopping centres and the Macquarie Centre and places like this. So trying to have this warm, loving, intimate, fun time at what, maybe didn't go so smoothly. And it's reported by the adoptive parents that, by the biological parents and the grandmother that, most of the time, the kids were happy, but, they were still calling their real parents mum and dad until kind of the last 8 months or so. But then within that time, there was another change, and William was more withdrawn on visits, just wanted cuddles on the last visit, and he was sporting a black eye. And it was explained by the foster mother that, he was climbing up on me and he's sort of fallen and gotten the black eye this way. But they also reported, the biological parents also reported that William and his sister looked undernourished, thin, and were different. Mr. Collins, the father of William Tyrrell and his sister, well, he's lost William twice, and he went into a desperate spiral. His life is destroyed in quite a brutal way. He turned to drugs, and he has a severe ice addiction, crystal meth. and he has basically lost his mind. He is in a very bad way mentally and physically. There was a time when he had to be put into urgent medical mental health care, and he thought he'd been in prison. He is nearly incoherent now, and it's a great strain, obviously, on his mother, who's fighting for William Tyrrell and for his case to be solved. And she's, you know, obviously a grieving woman who now has just awful situation upon awful situation to handle. So, yeah, quick recap. So William Tyrrell was in foster care when he went missing from the foster grandmother's home in an isolated town on the mid-coast of New South Wales. There's questions about everything. There's been the blame game played with many neighbours being blamed, and with even the biological parents got a visit immediately from police. They were questioned. They were arrested immediately. And yet the foster family, when they make statements, when you watch footage of it, if you haven't already, tell me what you think about their demeanour, about the things they say. There are these McCann vibes going on, I kid you not. And why do they still have William's sister in their care? You know, foster children are placed into homes where they're supposed to be considered to be safer, and to just poof off the face of the planet Earth. And there's crazy timelines, there's statements that change. One thing I will say, and I'm not going into anything in this video, but one thing I will mention is in the Ramsey case, the McCann case, and this case of missing boy William Tyrrell, there's the same thing in each case, and that is that the father figure has missing time that doesn't fit. With Jerry McCann, if you've watched James Bogart's series on YouTube, you will see that when Madeleine McCann was first reported as missing, and the Tappers 9 were carrying out these initial searches, you know, calling out for Madeleine and knocking on doors, you know, going to speak to the Ocean Resort management, and, you know, they were paired up and looking and that sort of thing, and none of their statements say, well, myself and Jerry, me and Jerry, Jerry and I. It's always them, or them with someone else in the group. There's no sort of statement where they say, and Jerry said to do this or that or the other. There's a 30-minute window where Jerry just isn't around. He can't be placed. And this is very unusual. And James Bogart shows that what he thinks happened anyway. What he says he thinks happened is that at this time, Jerry McCann had taken Madeleine away from the Ocean Resort in Pradaloo in the black case. He had, at some point along route down to the coast, taken Madeleine out of the case to carry her, and this is when the Smith sightings occurred, and then he has returned without Madeleine after securing her body in a hiding place somewhere that night. So in the Ramsey case, we know that in the case of murdered child JonBenet Ramsey, period around 11 o'clock, there's actually an hour and a half where no one's quite sure what John Ramsey was doing. And in fact, this even links to a statement about what he has said regarding his timeline in finding John Bonet, because there's statements that, oh, he said he found her at 11 a.m. And in the instance of William Tyrrell and the Saturday morning, the timeline, it might be coming clear to us meaning the plebs, you know, the public, when we get the results of the inquest. But, you know, to date, what I understand is that when did foster mother ring foster father? Well, we're not quite sure. That's not tied down. When did he return? What time? What time did she notice William missing? There's all these periods of time, 20, 25 minutes, where the timeline is, it's not smooth, it's not clear, it changes, and they're pretty free and easy with what they say about what they were doing in this period of the morning. And to do with the timeline that morning, the photograph that I mentioned of William Tyrrell in his little Spiderman suit on the deck, the last known photograph, there's questions coming up about the time the photo was taken, and it looks doctored, and people have testified to this. I even query if it was taken that day, if it wasn't on an earlier visit. You know, I'd like to know things like, actually, let's just stop it here. I wanted to keep this brief. But, you know, you've got so many destroyed people, destroyed careers. As I mentioned, Gary Jubilin's now turned up in the case of missing woman Melissa Caddick. He thinks it's very likely that she is in Sydney, hiding out where she feels comfortable. You've got, you know, the stop after McDonald's. You've got the McDonald's photos did show up. We are showing recently, more recently, photos at McDonald's, the family at McDonald's. They weren't released, and people queried this quite a lot. Were they actually there? What time really was it? Was William there with them? Was he seen alive then? Yeah. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this case, if you know anything about it. I'm going to link down below in the description the Australian 60 Minutes program. You may not have seen it. It's just aired, and it's interesting. One couple that Melissa Caddick ripped off is they're going to now move up to Tyrrell. Tyrrell is the region where William Tyrrell went missing from. I'll leave it there. So I'll have to get up to speed with this case, really. I've dropped sort of my interest in it, I guess, as far as being active and seeking out information over the last year. But a lot seems to have happened, you know, the doxing and stalking of these foster parents, the inquest, and yeah, I'm very, very curious to see where it goes. So now, maybe with, you know, the few months leading up to this June 18 date, it's a good time to start discussing the case. On June the 26th, the week after the inquest is released, that would be William Tyrrell's 10th birthday. His sister's now 10. She's been with these people for all these years, and no matter, you know, who knows what sort of information they've managed to download into her brain. They say, oh, she doesn't really remember him, but that they've got lots of photos to show her and remember the good times. She would like to be a lawyer or a policewoman so that she can help find him when she's older. And then I'll get back to you on this with the exact wording, but she uttered a phrase that was pure foster woman, pure foster mother. And it just curdled. It curdled me here, you know, because I thought, well, there you go, you know, we've got the obvious happening, and that is the puppetry, you know, the brainwashing, the this little flexible mind that's been with people that possibly had something to do with the disappearance or even death of little William Tyrrell. It's just an opinion, but as we get into this and I start to explain some of the things that they've said, how they say it, I think your interest will be piqued enough that you'll want to delve as deeply into it as I did when I first looked at it. You will find on YouTube, I think, many videos made by people that, you know, from all sorts of angles, people looking at it from Department of Child Services points of view, the biological family make videos, and they do it in a really concise way, and they make their points. And please look it up, and I will get back up to speed with it as well, and I will speak to you later. Thanks for listening.